It's coming on the back of the payment of 145 million to the families of the six victims of the Apo murder that happened years back, where a rogue police officer gave instructions to kill them on the false premise that the six deceased individuals were criminals. And it then turned out, after much investigations and public outcry, that they were traders who engaged in business in Abuja. Now, like I said at the start, this is a good step, and we understand from the story that ministries, departments, and agencies will delve into this plan. However, I have a couple of questions. The recent violations of human rights have not been done by ministries, departments, and agencies. They've been done by rogue officials in the police force, rogue officials in the armed forces, rogue officials in the paramilitary services like customs, immigration, and the civil defense corps. So, have these guys been delving into this action plan? What does it really entail, and what are the key things that have been put in to ensure that the plan does not fail, that the plan outlives this administration? These are questions for the incoming administration to ponder and to deliberate on, and to ensure that this action plan doesn't go the way of other plans that started well on paper and seemingly vanished overnight or over a period of time. Now, it's also instructive to note that Nigeria is the only African country that has been in full compliance in terms of the protection of the rights of journalists. And what do I mean by that? Unlike some other African countries where journalists have been killed in the line of duty, no journalist in, I'll dare say, the last decade has lost his life as a result of carrying out his duties. However, they have been harassed. In some cases, they have been illegally detained for long periods of time. And we hope that this practice will stop, because we must remember that the journalists, as a fourth estate of the Republic, have a duty to ensure that news is properly disseminated to members of the public. And if any public official feels that he has been defamed, there are legal remedies open to the public official to pursue to get a remedy. But to illegally arrest and detain journalists in the course of carrying out their professional duties, that has to stop. But all in all, it's a good step for Nigeria, and let's hope that we can build on this and get to a point where human rights are properly respected in Nigeria, not just by ministries, departments, and agencies, but also by the security agencies.
From Punch, the Ogun State government has alerted residents of Isheri, Mowe, Ibafo, and other border communities between Lagos and Ogun to relocate to avoid disaster as a result of another round of flooding. Now, Commissioner for Environment, Ola Oresanya, raised the alarm at a press conference in Abeokuta on Wednesday.
We're officially in rainy season, and unfortunately, we have global warming which was with us, which has exacerbated the impact of rainfall all around, not just even Nigeria, but all around the world. So we've seen a huge rise in rainfall levels, flooding across various parts of the country, the continent, and even other areas of the world. I recall last year there was a serious amount of flooding across the country. I think we had um, practically significant regions across the north central, northeast, northwest, southeast. Practically all of the regions, experienced severe flooding in various areas, which ended up affecting farming. So this is a good call to prepare. However, will these people move? One of the things I always wonder is when these instructions, so to speak, go out. Are there any alternatives for these people in terms of where they should go to? Because many of them would have to leave their homes, and they may not necessarily have an alternative place to go to. So I would like to know if there have ever been plans by the government to support relocation of people in these instances. And this is also a call to people as well, because even though we have global warming, even though it has affected the rise in rainfall, there are also impacts of activities that we engage in that have worsened this. So, for example, like when people clog the drains, when people build in areas where they're not supposed to build in, which might affect the natural flow of water or drains. When people don't construct to proper standards, especially within that area now. So this is the area around the Ogun River, which is already prone to flood. So for those who do not follow proper standards in that area, they're already threatening the flooding situation. So this is a very important call. Like I said, I just wonder where the people would have to go to, and it's predicted that would have rainfall from significant levels of rainfall from about April to November. So this is about maybe about a 6-month period, that may displace the activities of these people.
All right. Well, let us know what your thoughts are. It's interactive. 0809 440 981. And Yinka says it's simple. They should just relocate to the government house. Let's go on to Vanguard. Lagos proposes new law for compulsory compliance to building materials quality. Now, this new law is on the way to make substandard construction impossible in the state, and this according to the general manager of the Lagos State Materials Testing Laboratory.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. So, following the latest building collapse, which, funny enough, was not even in Ikoyi, it was on the mainland, the Lagos State government is now seriously desirous of putting an end to this seemingly never-ending menace of collapsing buildings. So, the law on the testing of building materials is being reviewed, and it's being sent to the House of Assembly for passing. Now, the revision of that law, what it stipulates is that for every building in Lagos now, either at the point of sale or at the point of construction, there must be what is described as a non-destructive test report. And that if you do not get that report, then either you cannot sell or you cannot continue building, in addition to a building survey plan. Now, this is instructive because along with this plan, there is a plan to bring in the private sector to certify buildings, certify materials are being used, and certify that the approved plans are being strictly adhered to in the process of construction. Why is the Lagos State government doing all of this? Confidence in the quality of buildings being constructed in Lagos has dropped, and especially with regards to the high-rise buildings. Now, if there is a public concern or there's a growing doubt about the quality or integrity of buildings being constructed in Lagos, it might not be significant at first, but if allowed to develop over time like a sore or an open wound, it will develop into something that the Lagos State government will find very adverse or inimical to its plans to grow the economy of Lagos, which is arguably in the top 5 economies in the entire African continent. So, another good step from the government, and let us pray and hope that this will not be another law that is nearly passed and is incapable of being enforced. Now, with the passing of this law, they have to increase capacity to ensure that the officials can test all around Lagos, because Lagos right now is a construction site in some parts, and you have multiple construction going on at the same time within the same area. So you're going to need more hands, you're going to need more resources, and I do pray and hope that Lagos State government will make available the funding required to get the extra hands, will make available the funding required to train them and retrain them, and we hope that they will not be compromised, because the governor did make a statement when he visited Banana Island over the weekend. He did indicate that he was aware that some Lagos State government officials were corrupt and had probably corrupted the process, and those who found responsible for the collapse in Banana Island will be prosecuted.
Now, speaking about the quality of these building materials, what's the role of the Standards Organization of Nigeria in all of this?
So, so for example, where you're talking about the iron rods, which are already made, and they have to be brought in. The Standards Organization of Nigeria SON is supposed to test them at the port of entry and ensure that they are fit for purpose and conform to the specifications. However, you will find that with regards to other building materials like blocks, building blocks, there is a prescribed formula for building it. But you will find that some people cut corners, there's less cement, there's more sand, more water, and then you find that bricks, they look strong, just hit them lightly and they crack. And then also the process of building, was the foundation done properly? Because if you miss the foundation for any building, if you get the foundation wrong, the building will collapse. Again, the foundation was done for a bungalow. Next thing, you stack 2 or 3 floors on top. You do not need a rocket scientist to tell you that that building will collapse because the foundation cannot sustain the load. Even with the construction of the building columns, if they're not done properly, they will not carry the load they're supposed to carry.
Let's go on to some messages coming through on WhatsApp. Daisy says Nigeria doesn't need any more laws, but to enforce the ones on ground first. Secondly, those who default must be seriously dealt with within the law. We're so comfortable buying our way out of everything. Mary says, I feel like Standards Organization of Nigeria has a role to play in the building collapse in Lagos. They should look more into the substandard goods and materials circulating in the market, even though those mixing the cement need to have more conscience. Abbas says, Lagos state government should also ensure that commercial buildings are not giving approvals in residential areas. We have places where bonded terminals and warehouses are given approval in residential areas. Lagos state government has created a lot of problems for so many residents who find it difficult to even have smooth access to their homes. We hope they would be serious now. And Yinka says, in addition to ensuring that approved plans are followed and duly approved, the state should also empower the sellers of these building materials to demand of the approved material takeoff documents because it's impossible a design requires for a Y2 steel rod, a lot of technicalities. Okay, a building requires about 6 meters setback from the fence, but there are 2 new buildings on my street that don't even respect that. The question is, who approves such? Let's take a quick break. We'll continue the conversation shortly. This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. You okay? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Gets a bit cold in here sometimes, although some people don't feel it.
No, it's my. So that's the only thing I suffer from, cough and cold.
Ever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cough and cold.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only thing I suffer from.
Excuse
And I
me.
used to suffer from colds. Then,
How do you do?
so, have you ever tried Fluco Day?
Not recently.
So what I found was if I took Fluco Day, even when I didn't have a cold,
Okay.
then over time I built up my immunity such that
Mm.
yep. You see, they come today. They come today.
See. Oh wow. All right. This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Our analysts this morning, Mr. C and Gbubemi, were looking at the stories making the headlines across the country. Let us know what your thoughts and your opinions are. 0809 4440981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. Catch the live stream up on YouTube, Smooth FM 981 Lagos. And we're taking this one from Daily Trust. Now, the federal government yesterday presented an operational license to the Delta State government to commence operations at the Delta Special Economic Zone.
Okay, that's good to hear. This joins other free trade zones such as the one at Calabar. And so basically, such areas enjoy tax breaks, concessions on importation, repatriation of capital profits, dividends. Basically, they enjoy some sort of special status that enables them to be able to do business better. So this is a welcome development to Delta State because one, it's an oil producing state, so there are potentially any number of oil products that can be produced and exported as well, or even sold locally at a cheaper cost. And then there's also the agricultural potential. Now, while it's good news, one of the things I always think about is yes, so the companies who end up getting into this free trade zone will end up benefiting from quite a few advantages. But what about the other businesses? I think that whilst we're celebrating this as well, we need to also look at conditions for ordinary businesses. So there are challenges with infrastructure, access to markets, capital, power, manufacturing. There's so many obstacles set up across the activities of the average business person that we also need to look at. When I was listening to Business Express this morning, we were talking about the ease of doing business. I couldn't help but think about how hard it is, both formally and informally, for many business people to be able to operate. So when you talk about the cost of doing business and you factor in all the things that like power and all of that, you also need to factor in informal costs. Things that you didn't prepare for, things like under the table payments that should ordinarily not exist and things like that. So a lot of all these obstacles, exist to frustrate the average business person. So again, like I said, whilst we celebrate the awarding of the license to the Delta State government for the free trade zone, we should also remember other businesses who are not necessarily in the free trade zone. There are a lot of impacts. There's a lot of impact that can be done for the average business person to improve operations. So whilst we also benefit from the free trade zone arrangement, we can also see improvements across businesses in all other ways that can impact on the economy.
Okay, so quickly, let me add to this. I agree with everything Gbubemi has said, but do we as a nation sit back and take stock? So this is not the first trade zone that has been inaugurated. How have the others fared? And I like the fact that he mentioned Calabar. Ever since Donald Duke left, what has really happened at Tinapa? I believe that's the name. Has it really achieved what it was set up to achieve? And if it hasn't and the others haven't, what are the limitations? What are the drawbacks? What are the obstacles? How are they being addressed? What are we doing to ensure that this new free trade zone does not go the way of the others that we can arguably say have not performed optimally? So these are questions for the government that if they're really serious about what they're doing, they should sit back, take stock, and re-strategize.
Austin says about the building collapses in Lagos, high-rise buildings built in the 50s, 60s, 70s are still standing, while those in recent years are collapsing. It's very unfortunate. And Loris says, what's the process like to get the names and offices that a building permit goes through? Okay, talking about how you can get a building permit, you might need to clarify that. Deepo says the government should ensure all materials manufacturing companies, retail and wholesale companies, especially wrought iron companies, have material testing certificates periodically. You don't want to hear what wrought iron traders say about the quality of the iron presently available for sale in the market. And Saratu says on the issue of collapsed buildings, even if you buy the building materials yourself, you have to be there to watch them use it. Otherwise, the purpose will be defeated. Some workers will sell high quality materials and buy low quality materials to build your house. Some contractors are not very kind. From Business Day, the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, has expressed disappointment over the recent strike spearheaded by the industry unions in the sector.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. Now, the aviation unions have been going on strike because there are certain demands that they have made that have not been addressed. Also, they are disturbed about the plan by Mr. Serica to demolish a number of buildings at the international airport to accommodate the new terminal that was built by the Chinese and to build what he calls an airport city. And they're of the opinion that that plan should be reviewed and probably adjusted. But apparently, he's not listened to them. And now they've decided that, look, we've gone the route of dialogue. We've tried to sit down with you, we've tried to reason with you, and you're not amenable to what we're saying. You're not even willing to consider what we're saying. So we will go the tried and tested route in Nigeria, which is go on strike. When you go on strike, you embarrass whoever it is, the public officials, then they're forced to come to the table and actually do what they should have done months ago, which is actually listen. Now he says he's embarrassed that. Now he's not embarrassed because they have legitimate grievances. He's embarrassed because he's about to leave and he thinks the timing of the strike is mischievous and is injurious to his perceived reputation. Excuse me, sir. If they have legitimate demands, if they have legitimate grievances, it's not about your ego or your feelings. Please sit down with them and address them. Yes, he did say that strikes are not the way to go. But what other option do they have? The Nigerian legal system is not actually inspiring a lot of confidence in the average Nigerian because cases tend to drag on for like forever. And that is because we have a lot of cases in the system that shouldn't be there. Our judges are overworked. We don't have enough judges. And there are all sorts of tricks being employed by lawyers to delay cases. So it's a long problem with different facets, different hydra headed issues. But Mr. Sirica, if you want your legacy to be protected, if you want it to be the legacy you have Nigerians have of you, please sit down with the aviation industries and come to a conclusion or some sort of agreement with them on the issues bedeviling them.
Jane says Tinapa went extinct after the governor left power. Conrad, what has happened to testing material agencies? Why are there no consequences on airing government officials and even the construction teams from structural, building, electrical, and all that are involved in putting up the structures? Lagos needs to speak truth to power, or else these tragedies will continue. Henry says the reason we keep seeing buildings collapse is that there are no repercussions. When a building collapses, there should be an investigation, and everyone from the architect to the engineer to the permit approvers should be checked and punished if necessary. From Vanguard, the federal government has taken steps to ensure competitiveness of the nation's raw materials to ward off rejection in the international market. Now, Chukuma Ngaha, who is the Director of Corporate Services, Raw Material Research and Development Council, disclosed this in Abuja yesterday while on a tour of the facilities and speaking about the challenges that Nigeria had experienced.
So this is a welcome development. But the raw materials agency is looking to tackle council rather is um, looking to tackle this from the point of the development of, for example, like the seeds. However, it's not just the seeds that determine the suitability of the raw materials for export, because even if you have the right kind of seeds that fit the right standards, there's still the various cultivation and harvesting practices that will impact on the yield or the quality of the final raw material it is that you have available for export. So a lot of all these things, I believe, also should also involve other agencies that support farmers, for example. So even as little as things as fertilizer, there are standards regarding whether fertilizer should even be used now that everybody's going organic. The type of fertilizer that should be used in cultivating some of all these crops. So those are the kind of things that the agency should be working in partnership with other agencies about, to ensure that from the development of the seeds up until the point of harvesting, even storage, even transporting some of these materials, there are lots of processes that that can affect the quality of the raw materials even when they get out for export. But then again, we're talking about the raw materials, you know. Yes, we're making money from exporting raw materials, but we could be making much more money if we were converting those raw materials into final products here in Nigeria, or even if not final products, intermediate products, such that we can earn a lot more in the international markets from either, you know, further exporting these final products, or you know, or the intermediate products. So that's something else that I think it may not be under their remit actually, but that's something that we also need to look at as well. So it's not just about ensuring that the standards are met. Then we also need to look at the role of like the Standards of Organization of Nigeria, maybe NAFDAC as well. I'm not sure what their role is regarding raw materials. I'm not sure if their coverage extends to that. But all the required agencies that need to look at ensuring that standards are met and maintained needs to also be involved in this as well.
All right, from Punch, the governorship candidate of the APC in Adamawa State, Aisha Dahiru, so-called Binani, withdrew her suit seeking a judicial review of the decision by INEC to reverse her declaration as poll winner.
Okay, so very quickly, as expected, she withdrew that suit that should never.
Was it expected?
Yeah, it was expected, and I'll explain why. The suit should never be filed in the first place because the individual who made the announcement lacked the power to do so. Subsequently, 2 days later, INEC now declared the winner of the Adamawa State gubernatorial election. And given the fact that it had now become an academic exercise and that the proper forum for challenging the results of any election is the election tribunal, it made no sense to continue in that court. And we must remember the mischief that was started when filing the suit. She came by way of motion ex parte, and the judge said no, put everybody on notice, come back a week later, and come and address us on the issue of jurisdiction. The lawyer shows up and says events have overtaken the case, and the judge pointed out the fact that he had given an order that was not complied with, and he dismissed the suit. Now, if she's still interested in ventilating that claim or grievance, she has to do it at the election tribunal. Then, in other news, some party members of the PDP have reportedly been held by the DSS for a period for 7 days, which is in excess of a constitutional period of 48 hours. Now, I'm not going to hold brief for the DSS. I'm not holding brief for the PDP, but the DSS is convinced that these individuals have a case to answer. Take them to court, file charges against them, and let them have their day in court. Give them every opportunity to clear their names and establish their innocence if they can.
All right, well, that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thanks for listening. Thank you for your messages. And of course, special thanks to our analysts, Mr. C and Gbubemi, for joining us this morning. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.